My beloved children, I want to share with you a story that touches the very essence of love itself. It is a tale that unfolds in the heart of America, in a small town where the morning mist dances with the golden rays of dawn. This is a story about two souls who were created as one, separated by the mysteries of existence and destined to find each other again. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, there lived a young woman named Sarah. She was a teacher at the local elementary school, with eyes that sparkled like the morning dew and a heart so pure that even the angels would pause to admire her kindness. Every morning, Sarah would walk through the town square, greeting everyone with a smile that could heal the deepest wounds. Sarah had always felt incomplete, as if a part of her soul was missing. She would often sit by her bedroom window at night, gazing at the stars, feeling a longing she could not explain. It was not loneliness, for she was surrounded by loving friends and family. It was something deeper, a calling from the very depths of her being. On the other side of town lived a man named Michael, a carpenter who worked with his hands to create beautiful things from simple wood. He had moved to Willowbrook 3 years ago, seeking peace after losing his parents in a tragic accident. Michael carried a gentle strength about him, the kind that comes from weathering storms and still choosing to believe in beauty. Like Sarah, Michael felt an inexplicable emptiness. He would often work late into the night, his hands crafting intricate pieces of furniture, trying to fill a void that no amount of creativity could satisfy. He too would look up at the same stars that Sarah gazed upon, unknowingly sharing the same silent prayer for completion. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, had been preparing their paths to cross. Every choice they made, every person they met, every moment of joy and sorrow was weaving the tapestry that would bring them together. For I had written their story before time began, inscribing their names upon each other's hearts. One autumn morning, Sarah decided to visit the local farmer's market. The air was crisp with the promise of fall, and the leaves painted the world in shades of gold and amber. She needed fresh flowers for her classroom, wanting to brighten the day for her students who had been struggling with the recent changes in their young lives. At the same market, Michael was selling handcrafted wooden toys and decorative pieces. He had started this small business to share his gift with the community, finding joy in seeing children's faces light up when they discovered his creations. His booth was simple but elegant, displaying each piece with the care of someone who understood the value of beauty in everyday life. Sarah approached his booth, drawn by a delicate wooden music box that seemed to call to her soul. As she reached for it, her fingers accidentally brushed against Michael's hand. The moment their skin touched, both felt an electric connection that seemed to awaken something dormant within them. Time stood still as they looked into each other's eyes. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, though she didn't step away. Something about this stranger felt familiar, like coming home after a long journey. His eyes held a warmth that made her feel safe, understood, and deeply known without having spoken a single word about herself. Michael's heart began to race, not from anxiety, but from recognition. "Please, don't apologize," he said softly, his voice carrying a tenderness that surprised even him. "I feel like I've been waiting my whole life for you to touch that music box." The words came naturally, though he had never believed in such romantic notions before. They stood there for what felt like eternity, yet was only moments. Other customers moved around them, the world continued its bustling pace, but Sarah and Michael existed in a bubble of perfect stillness. Neither wanted to break the spell that had been cast over them. "I'm Sarah," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter this miraculous moment. Her heart was beating so fast, she was certain he could hear it, yet she felt more at peace than she had in years. "Michael," he replied, and as he spoke his name, Sarah felt a recognition so deep it brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't just his name she recognized, but his very essence, as if her soul was greeting an old friend after countless years of separation. The music box continued to play its gentle melody, and Sarah realized that the tune was one she had hummed her entire life without knowing where she had learned it. It was a song that had always lived in her heart, a melody that had comforted her through lonely nights and celebrated with her in moments of joy. "This song," Sarah said, her eyes wide with wonder. "I've known it all my life, but I've never heard it played before." Michael's breath caught in his throat because he too had carried this melody within him, often finding himself humming it while he worked, as if it were the soundtrack to his very existence. "I carved this piece 3 years ago," Michael explained, his voice filled with awe. "The melody just came to me in a dream. I've never heard it anywhere else, and I always wondered if I had imagined it." Aduli, the realization that they shared this connection felt like the first piece of a puzzle finally finding its place. As the morning progressed, neither Sarah nor Michael could bring themselves to part ways. They found excuses to linger, Sarah examining every piece in his booth with genuine admiration, while Michael shared the stories behind each creation. Every conversation revealed new connections, new threads that bound their lives together in inexplicable ways. They discovered they had both moved to Willowbrook, seeking healing. Sarah had come after a difficult breakup that had left her questioning whether true love actually existed, while Michael had arrived after the loss of his parents, searching for a place where his wounded heart might find peace. "Would you like to have coffee?" Michael asked as the market began to wind down. His hands were trembling slightly, not from nervousness, but from the overwhelming sense that this moment was changing everything. Sarah nodded, unable to trust her voice, knowing that saying yes was saying yes to far more than just coffee. They walked to a small cafe on Main Street, their steps naturally falling into sync. Other people on the sidewalk seemed to sense something special between them, stepping aside with knowing smiles, as if they could see the invisible threads of destiny weaving around this couple. Over steaming cups of coffee and warm apple pie, Sarah and Michael talked for hours. They shared their dreams, their fears, their childhood memories, and their hopes for the future. With each story, each laugh, each moment of comfortable silence, they felt the missing pieces of themselves clicking into place. Sarah learned that Michael had always wanted to build a home with his own hands, not just a house, but a true home filled with love and laughter. Michael discovered that Sarah dreamed of creating a family where children would grow up knowing they were cherished beyond measure, where every bedtime would end with stories of hope and wonder. As the afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows, Sarah realized she had never felt so completely herself with another person. There was no pretending, no carefully constructed persona, just the pure truth of who she was being met with acceptance and admiration. "I need to tell you something," Michael said, his voice serious but gentle. "I've never believed in love at first sight. I've always thought it was something people convinced themselves of because they wanted romance in their lives." Sarah nodded, understanding completely because she had felt the same way. "But this," he continued, reaching across the small table to take her hand, "this feels different. This feels like remembering something I had forgotten, like finding something I didn't even know I had lost." His words perfectly captured what Sarah had been feeling but couldn't articulate. Tears gathered in Sarah's eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming joy of being truly understood. "I feel like I've been walking around with only half a heart my whole life," she whispered, "and now I'm complete." The simple truth of her words hung in the air between them like a sacred promise. That evening, they walked through the town together, neither wanting the day to end. They talked about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silences and excited by the conversations. Every moment felt both brand new and timelessly familiar. When they finally reached Sarah's front porch, they stood facing each other in the soft glow of the streetlight. The night air was cool, but the warmth between them created its own microclimate of comfort and safety. "I know this sounds crazy," Sarah said, her voice soft but steady, "but I feel like I've been waiting for you my entire life without even knowing it." Michael stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers, and she could see her own feelings reflected back to her. "It doesn't sound crazy at all," he replied, gently cupping her face in his hands. "It sounds like coming home." When their lips finally met in their first kiss, the entire universe seemed to exhale in satisfaction, as if creation itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. The weeks that followed were filled with the golden light of new love, but it was more than that. Sarah and Michael didn't just fall in love, they fell into perfect synchronicity. Their lives began to intertwine naturally, effortlessly, as if they were two rivers that had finally found their way back to the same ocean. Michael would surprise Sarah by showing up at her school with lunch on difficult days, somehow always knowing exactly when she needed support. Sarah would appear at Michael's workshop with fresh coffee and encouragement precisely when he was struggling with a particularly challenging project. Their friends and family watched in amazement as two people who had seemed content but incomplete suddenly blossomed into their fullest selves. Sarah's laughter became more musical, her eyes brighter, her very presence more radiant. Michael's gentle strength grew into quiet confidence, his creativity flourished, and his smile became a beacon of joy. They began to plan a future together with the natural ease of two people who had never doubted their destination, only their path. Michael designed a house for them, incorporating all of Sarah's dreams and his own vision of home. Sarah imagined the children who would run through those rooms, the love that would fill every corner. But as I watched over them, I knew that their greatest test was yet to come. True love is not proven in moments of joy, but in times of trial. The depth of their connection would be measured not by their happiness, but by their willingness to choose each other when choosing became difficult. One spring morning, Michael received a phone call that would change everything. His estranged brother, David, whom he hadn't spoken to in 5 years, was dying and had asked to see him. The brother who had blamed Michael for their parents' accident, who had cut all contact and left Michael to grieve alone. The call came just as Michael and Sarah were finalizing their wedding plans. Their perfect life seemed to pause as Michael struggled with feelings of anger, guilt, and an old pain he thought he had healed. Sarah watched the man she loved disappear into himself, his light dimming under the weight of unresolved family trauma. "I have to go to him," Michael told Sarah that evening, his voice heavy with dread. "But I don't know if I can face him. What if he's still angry? What if seeing me makes his last days worse instead of better?" The vulnerability in his voice broke Sarah's heart, but it also revealed the depths of his compassion. Sarah took his hands in hers, looking directly into his troubled eyes. "Then we'll go together," she said simply. "Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." Her words were not just an offer of support, but a declaration of absolute partnership, a promise that their love was stronger than any individual burden. "Sarah, you don't understand," Michael protested. "David hates me. He's convinced that if I had driven that night instead of Dad, they would still be alive. Being around him means being around someone who sees me as a killer." The pain in his voice was raw, years of suppressed guilt and grief finally surfacing. "Then he'll see how wrong he is," Sarah replied with quiet strength. "He'll see the man I see, the man who builds beautiful things with his hands, who treats children with gentleness, who loves so deeply he's willing to face his own pain to ease someone else's." Her faith in him was unwavering, a lighthouse in his storm of self-doubt. They traveled across the country to a small hospital in Oregon where David lay dying of cancer. The journey was difficult, filled with Michael's anxiety and Sarah's prayers for wisdom. She had never seen the man she loved so broken, and it tested her own faith in their ability to weather any storm. When they arrived at the hospital, Michael stood frozen outside David's room. Through the small window, they could see a man who looked like a shadow of the brother Michael remembered, thin and pale, but still carrying an aura of anger, even in his weakened state. "I can't do this," Michael whispered, his entire body trembling. "I can't look at him and see the blame in his eyes again. It nearly destroyed me the first time." Sarah could feel his pain as if it were her own, the empathy between them so strong that his wounds became hers. But Sarah also saw something Michael couldn't see in his fear. She saw David's nurse approaching them with tears in her eyes, and she heard the words that would change everything. "Are you Michael? He's been asking for you every day for weeks. He says he needs to tell you something before it's too late." The nurse's words shifted something in the atmosphere, replacing dread with possibility. Sarah gently took Michael's arm, lending him her strength while honoring his need to choose his own path forward. Love, she was learning, sometimes meant standing steady while the other person found their courage. Together, they entered David's room. The man in the bed looked up with eyes that held no anger, only regret and a desperate hope for forgiveness. The years of resentment seemed to fall away as David saw his brother's face, and Michael saw not an accuser, but a dying man who had been carrying his own unbearable guilt. "Michael," David whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The words that followed changed everything Michael had believed about that terrible night 5 years ago. David confessed that he had been the one driving, that he had been drinking, and that he had let Michael take the blame because he couldn't face the truth himself. The room filled with the sound of Michael's sobs as 5 years of false guilt lifted from his shoulders. Sarah watched through her own tears as the two brothers embraced, years of pain dissolving in the face of truth and forgiveness. This was the miracle of love, not just romantic love, but the love that heals families and restores relationships thought lost forever. David passed away 3 days later, but those 3 days were filled with healing conversations, shared memories, and the rebuilding of a brotherhood that had been broken by tragedy and misunderstanding. Michael was able to say goodbye, not just to his brother, but to the version of himself that had carried undeserved shame for so long. On the flight home, Michael turned to Sarah with eyes that were clearer than she had ever seen them. "Thank you for not letting me run away," he said. "Thank you for believing in us enough to walk into that pain with me." Sarah realized that their love had been tested and had emerged not just intact, but stronger and deeper than before. "That's what soulmates do," Sarah replied, the word feeling natural and right for the first time in her life. "We show up for each other, especially when showing up is hard." The truth of her words settled around them like a blessing, confirming what they had both come to understand about their connection. Their wedding took place 6 months later in the garden behind the house Michael had built for them. It was a simple ceremony, but every detail reflected their journey together. From the music box melody played by a string quartet to the wooden altar Michael had crafted with his own hands. As they exchanged vows, both Sarah and Michael felt the presence of something greater than themselves, blessing their union. Their words were not just promises to each other, but acknowledgments of the divine plan that had brought them together and would continue to guide their path forward. "I promise to be your safe harbor in every storm," Michael said, his voice strong and clear, "and to celebrate with you in every moment of joy. I promise to see you truly, love you completely, and choose you daily for all the days of my life." His words carried the weight of everything they had already weathered together. Sarah's vows were equally profound. "I promise to be your partner in building not just a home, but a legacy of love. I promise to believe in you when you doubt yourself, to stand with you when the world stands against you, and to love you with the same certainty that I love my own soul." When they were pronounced husband and wife, the entire gathering felt the sacred nature of the moment. This was not just a marriage, but the reunion of two parts of one soul, separated by the mystery of creation and brought back together by the power of divine love. Their first years of marriage were filled with the ordinary miracles that make a life beautiful. Michael's carpentry business flourished as word spread about his extraordinary craftsmanship and the love that went into every piece. Sarah's influence at the school grew as her joy and wisdom touched the lives of countless children and families. But the greatest miracle was yet to come. When Sarah discovered she was pregnant with their first child, both she and Michael felt the completion of a circle that had begun long before their own births. They were not just creating new life, they were participating in the eternal dance of souls, choosing to experience love in human form. Their daughter Grace was born on a snowy December morning, arriving with eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom and a smile that melted every heart she encountered. Holding her for the first time, Sarah and Michael understood that their love had been the vessel through which another soul had chosen to enter the world. As Grace grew, she displayed an unusual sensitivity to the love around her. She would often tell her parents stories about before, describing a place where souls waited to be born and choose their families. Her innocent wisdom confirmed what Sarah and Michael had always felt, that their meeting was not accident, but destiny. Years passed, filled with the rich tapestry of family life. Michael built playhouses and dollhouse furniture, while Sarah taught Grace to read and helped her discover her own unique gifts. Their home became a sanctuary where love was not just spoken, but lived in every interaction. Other children joined their family. First Marcus, a son with Michael's gentle strength and artistic eye, then twin girls, Hope and Faith, who seemed to bring double portions of joy wherever they went. Each child felt like a gift, another soul choosing to be part of their family's story of love. As their children grew and began to ask questions about love and soulmates, Sarah and Michael found themselves becoming teachers of divine love. They shared their story not as fairy tale, but as testimony to the power of faith, patience, and the willingness to remain open to miracles. "How did you know Daddy was your soulmate?" Grace asked one evening as Sarah tucked her into bed. Sarah smiled, remembering her own questions as a child, her own longing for a love that would complete her. "I knew because when I met him, I stopped feeling like I was searching for something," Sarah explained gently. "It was like my heart said, 'Oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you.'" Grace nodded with the understanding that only children possess, accepting the mystery and magic of true love. Michael, overhearing from the doorway, added, "And I knew because loving your mother doesn't feel like work. It feels like coming alive, like becoming who I was always meant to be." These conversations became treasured traditions, passing down wisdom about love that transcended the romantic to touch the eternal. As Sarah and Michael entered their later years, their love only deepened. They had weathered illness, financial struggles, the challenges of raising children, and the inevitable changes that come with time. Through it all, their connection remained their source of strength and their greatest joy. Now, my children, you might wonder why I tell you this story. It is because I want you to understand that the love between Sarah and Michael is not unique in its possibility, only in its expression. Each of you carries within your heart the capacity for this kind of love, this recognition of another soul that completes your own. Sarah and Michael's story teaches us that soulmates are not found by searching frantically, but by becoming fully who you are meant to be and trusting that love will find you when you are ready to receive it. Their connection was powerful not because it was easy, but because they chose each other daily, through joy and trial alike. Their love reminds us that true partnership means supporting each other's growth, facing difficulties together, and celebrating not just the good times, but the courage it takes to love deeply in a world that often seems to work against such connections. Most importantly, their story demonstrates that love is not just a feeling, but an action, not just a discovery, but a choice, not just a blessing, but a responsibility to honor the sacred gift of connection with another soul. So remember, beloved ones, as you walk your own paths and search for your own connections, that love is always near. It might come as a touch at a farmer's market, a shared melody, a moment of perfect understanding, or in countless other ways. But it will come, because love is your divine inheritance, and you are worthy of the miracle that Sarah and Michael found in each other. May you recognize your own soulmate when they appear. May you have the courage to love deeply and completely. And may you always remember that every true love story is a glimpse of the infinite love that connects us all. This is my gift to you, my promise to you, and my blessing upon all who dare to love with their whole hearts.